If you've ever talked to a property owner that wants to sell their portfolio of properties, but you're not sure exactly the best way to do it, all in one contract or separate contracts, or how to comp all of them. Well, in this episode, Ryan and his COO, Clint, uncovered their deal with 21 properties for a wholesale fee of over $500,000. Tell us from the beginning about how this deal came about back in June, it sounds like.
June was when when things really got serious. I have to go back. Later on, I've realized, like in the last 2 weeks, I realized this actually started from a cold call that I did back in January.
Okay, wow.
And I had made a note at home. I scribbled it on a pad of paper, this guy's name and his phone number, and that he was interested in selling. And then nothing really ever materialized. Then fast forward, was it May, late May, somewhere around there? A phone call came in from this gentleman's power of attorney. And we have my mother-in-law actually answers inbound calls for us. And so she answered the call and she sent a group text out to Clint and I saying, hey, this person has, 21 houses they want to sell. And so I'm like, okay, I'll call it. And I called it and I talked to the gal on the phone and she explained that this owner lives out of state, that these properties have all been costing him tons of money every single month and they just want to get rid of them. And she said, just make an offer and let's go from there. And I'm like, okay, well, let's drive by them first and see. And so it actually started with I told her, I said, let's just do a few of these at a time. And if it goes well, then we'll keep going down the path. So I went and looked at a couple of them. I came back, I talked to Clint. I'm like, I'm going to offer this, this, and this. And thinking I was offering a low price, thinking they'll come back. And so I called her. I said, hey, here's, we looked at these houses. Here's the offers. And they were uncomfortably low, even for me. Telling them what my offer was nerve-wracking because it was going to lead to a $20,000 assignment fee per property. And there's 3 of them. And then she's like, yep, sounds good. And I was like, that's crazy. And so then I called Clint and I'm like, hey, we got this list of all these properties. Let's go look at them and formulate an offer on the rest of these as well.
And Clint is your chief operating officer, and you met at church, and you guys have been working together since 2 or 3 years, right?
That's what we call him. But yes, that is the true fact.
Yeah.
Clint is the chief operating officer for our wholesaling and construction company.
And the construction company.
Yeah. So
why did you laugh that you said that's what you call him? Is it because he does more?
We just like to give each other a hard time. So if he wants to call himself a COO, he can.
What do you call Ryan?
Ryan. No, I'm just joking.
That's it. I don't have a title.
It depends on the day, I think. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a good time. We both, when I first started talking to him with interest of kind of transitioning out of my job, coming into Heritage, and we're just brainstorming, and he was like, I really don't have a job description for this. And I was like, you don't need one. I was like, if we work together, I'm just going to act like it's a business I own. Like all the decisions I make, I'll just make the decisions as if I own the company. So you can just kind of trust that I have your best interest in mind because it's what I would do, And so that's just kind of how we roll. Ryan makes decisions he thinks are best. I do as well. We talk about them sometimes before we make them.
Yeah.
But it's a good working relationship.
Not to get too sidetracked on this deal, but before we go further, do you end up stepping on each other's toes ever, or do you ever disagree on things? How do you handle those situations?
I don't think there's ever been a time I can say I don't ever feel like there's been a time that my toes have been stepped on. I will say Clint is usually I'll say something, and Clint is usually the one to be like, "Yeah, let's think about that." And that's probably for good reason, because I can be very quick to make a choice, and sometimes he's the brakes, and that's always good. Um, in this particular deal, uh, Clint actually made us a lot of money in this deal because I was going to offer quite a bit more money on these houses, and Clint is the reason that we offered lower than we did, and then we were both shocked when it panned out. So
Well, Clint, what was your reasoning?
I think in general, I'm a little bit more conservative or worse. I'm not like the sky is falling type of person, but a little bit more worst case scenario mindset than Ryan is, which it's good. It offsets each other. I mean, there's sometimes that, like Ryan is, we bring each other ideas, or Ryan's like, we should do something, and I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. We do it, and it turns out to be a good idea, or vice versa. Ryan might say, hey, let's do
always
this, and I'm like,
actually ended up as a good
and I'm
idea.
like, and I'm like, let's not for the following reasons, and then we don't do, like, and so it works both ways. But this, I think, was just we didn't have visibility to the inside of these properties before we made the offers. Of the 21 properties, I believe 18 or 19 had tenants in them. And so the seller did not want us to walk through all these properties, spook all the tenants, create a stir amongst, what was going on. They wanted to kind of keep it under the radar until we officially had a contract in place. And so we were only able to look at the outside of each of these places. And so that's kind of what led to the conservative nature of, hey, we haven't seen any of the foundations. We don't know how the HVACs look on the inside, or yeah, they have air conditioning units, but do they actually work? We don't know all these pieces. So that was probably the component that led me to recommend lower prices.
That makes sense because you're taking a risk and you're still doing what they want, which is an offer.
Yeah.
So
And we
very
know that
nice.
you can't always come, we know that we could always come back and say, hey, we did a walkthrough, and we did later do a walkthrough, but we could always come back and say, hey, we did a walkthrough and we found this, we found that, but we didn't want to do that for 20 properties. We didn't want to get them under
Right.
contract and come back and say, hey, we want to collectively lower the price $100,000 across all these properties. That may just kill the deal. So
Yep.
wanted to come in conservative, and then to our advantage, whenever we did eventually have an opportunity to walk all of the properties, they weren't in great condition, but we were pleasantly surprised they were in better condition than what our first offers reflected of taking in mind potential worst case scenarios. They were in better condition than that.
Got it. So when you draw up a contract for 21 properties, are you doing separate contracts or are they all listed on the same purchase agreement?
We did separate for this particular deal.
Okay. Was every house about the same price, or how did you end up making an offer for each one? How did you calculate the offer for each one?
We took what Ryan wanted to do and we subtracted 5,000. No, I'm just joking.
Well, what did Ryan want to do? I guess each house will have a
So
slightly different value based on the particular street that it's in, or maybe the difference in square footage, or plus or minus a bathroom, right?
that's actually exactly right. We kind of had our base point going in of just knowing, hey, we're only seeing the outside, and then so based on what we saw from the outside, based on the street that it was on, et cetera, either move the needle down or move the needle up. But we kind of started with a rough baseline, at least in this area, say of around $20,000, and again, just move that needle up or down based on what we saw.
Got it. Do you guys have a formula that you generally use for evaluating what you can buy a property for? I assume it's something like perfect condition house minus 20% minus this, repair estimates minus a wholesale fee or something like
We
that.
stick pretty much to the general and the most common 70% rule formula. Now, I typically take that a little bit further because I don't love the idea or even like the idea of working towards a max allowable offer and then offering that. So I typically will do the 70% rule, but then I like to refer it to the bubble gut rule. So the bubble gut rule is you need to come up with a number that's going to make your stomach hurt when you give the number to the person. So max allowable offer maybe is 50,000. Well, what number would you offer that would make your stomach nervous? Well, maybe like 20,000. So I always have that in the back of my mind. But in this case, even my lower number on a couple of these houses, Clint was like, I think we should go at 14. And it's like, ooh, okay, we'll see what happens. So there is the 70% rule basis, but then you really make your money when you're negotiating the price. So if you just go lower initially, the opportunity to make more money on a deal presents itself. So
Another factor too that we had to work into place was the motivation of the seller and what meeting their needs looked like on this. Now, it benefited us that their needs were to have a smooth transaction and a quick transaction, along with someone who could manage the entire process for them. The seller's out of state, a very elderly individual. His power of attorney running this had never been involved in a transaction like this. So we were able to factor some of those into the purchase price that we offered as well, knowing, hey, if we are low enough on these, we will be able to easily find buyers. If we find buyers at the higher end, great, that's better for us. But even if we find buyers at the lower end, we don't want to slow down the deal by being such a high price to the seller that we have to work these over a longer period of time to find a buyer that makes a profit. Because again, I mean, just mutual beneficial of knowing that the seller, they want these gone quick as well. So we had to factor that into our prices as well. Again, not just what worked for us, but worked for them also.
So if you talked to the guy in January, why did his power of attorney call you? And who is that? Just his attorney?
No.
And why didn't he call you himself?
Well, I don't know the back end. Some of this was kind of weird, even putting it together and us trying to figure out. I had talked to him just from cold calling, and he had answered, and he had mentioned that he was in fact interested in selling the property at the time that I was calling about. And then I don't know. There's some speculation that maybe that's why they called back, was he had my number, or at some point between January and the point that they called us, he had hired her to be his power of attorney. And I don't know what the relationship was. If there was, we don't know exactly. We've speculated how that might have happened, but we don't know why there was a power of attorney. But somewhere between January and when we got the houses under contract, he had hired her. She had called us, and we don't know if that was because of the conversation that I had with him in January, or if she just found us from other things. So
when would somebody typically hire a power of attorney? Typically when you're in bad health, right?
Yeah, end of life, elderly years.
Yeah. It can be a family member sometimes, but this seems like a separate person.
This was a separate person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's her job title? Like, is that a service that she normally provides to people?
I think she was newer to the role, maybe a friend of a friend type of scenario to help him out. And I think once she got involved, she was able to further evaluate his business transactions and further evaluate that these properties were losing him money, based on just being unmanaged for the most part. These had been unmanaged rental properties for a long period of time. So she was able to come in, see the need, the increased need, and the increased urgency to sell these properties.
So power of attorney is pretty big deal to give somebody that power, right? It kind of lets them sign for contracts on your behalf, I think, right?
We learned a lot about this process. So in short, the answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no.
Okay. How did you guys verify that this was legit and she wasn't just some person saying this?
The title company was very involved, highly involved, because he owned these properties in an LLC. And so she was his power of attorney, but not the LLC's power of attorney. And that's where it kind of gets into the weeds. But the title company was able to review all the LLC documents, the power of attorney documents, and say, okay, she can sign for this type of transaction. She cannot sign for this type of transaction. So is what it came down to.
Did you ever talk to the guy at all?
We did, in conversation a few times with him. We actually had to have a mobile notary go to him in Chicago and sign for, was it all of them or majority of them? But she ended up
Yeah.
not being able to be the one signing. We actually had to have his signature. So
Did he seem in good health?
we didn't physically go there, but I could say
Interesting.
just by conversation, like you could tell, like he was slowing down some for sure.
Well, fascinating, guys. I'm curious, was there any other hiccups besides at the title company, them having to figure out the LLC laws and how the power of attorney could sign for them or not?
I'll touch on this, Ryan, if you don't mind. So
Yeah.
this was a type of deal where, and I just jotted this down beforehand. Here's the number of people that are involved. You have the seller, you have his power of attorney, you have 19 different tenants across
Yep.
21 different properties. You have a property manager who has been managing the last 10 years and whose livelihood is an income is based on managing these 20 properties. You have the title company, you have the buyers, and then you have us as the wholesalers. And so there's a lot of people involved. So yes, to hiccups along the way. Just, we try to always be like one or two steps ahead of what people's perception is of the moment. And so we had to perceive that these tenants are all going to worry, am I losing my housing? If this, and if so, if they have that perception, if they have a negative perception, are they going to do things that try to sabotage the deal? And so we had to be on top of things with communication to them, and trying to assure them that we were working on their behalf to help them keep housing. And fortunately, most all of them were able to stay. So it was a really good outcome at the end. But we had to be that advocate on their behalf, again, so they wouldn't try to sabotage the deal. The property manager, we had to rely on the property manager to help us in a lot of ways. But keep in mind, the property manager is soon losing their income. And so we had to do a lot of things with the property manager to keep them on our side, to view us as friend and not foe. And so
How did you do that?
we
Very
tried
tricky.
to and this wasn't completely false, but we tried to give the perception of, hey, if you help this transaction go smoothly, like we know multiple other property management companies in the city that we will put in a good word for you. We will try to help get you employment at another property management company, either through handyman services that they provide or just through general property management services. So it was kind of the carrot that we tried to dangle
Oh,
along
so
the
this
way.
guy was only managing these properties.
Correct.
Yeah.
Got it.
Correct.
That did not necessarily work at the end of this. Throughout the process, like after we'd gotten fairly deep into it, that property manager kind of went rogue, stopped communicating with us, was doing some stuff on the back end of it, communicating with the tenants that was making it a little bit more difficult. One of the biggest snags when you're working on properties that are filled with a tenant, and when you're moving that from one buyer to another buyer, is the transfer of money for your deposits. And we struggled quite hard with determining, because of poor record keeping, who had paid a deposit and who had not paid a deposit. As well as like when the actual transaction closed, the new owner was wondering, where's the money for all the deposits? And so we had quite a process to figure out who had paid one, who had not paid one, who may have paid it and it never got to us. And unfortunately, like, I don't think that was one of the things that ended very cleanly. There was a lot of people who say they paid it, but we had no way to prove it, because there was no record of that money being deposited anywhere. So
How will that be handled by the new owner, do you think?
So in some cases, we just stepped in. So in some of these, it's the difference of $200 to $300 per transaction, and based on the margins that we had, and just trying to get it across the finish line with,
Yeah, you stepped up to solve the issue yourself. Nice.
Yes. So in some ways that was us. In some ways we were able to obtain the information through a lot of trying. But yeah, that was it. For any listener out there wondering if you're selling or buying a rental property and it's transitioning from one owner to the other, there's two things that the title company has to be involved in transferring, and that is the deposit, and that's also any proration of the month's rent that has to
Yeah.
be. So the title company has to be involved in those two things, and it's not. That is not a period of time where someone steps in and says, "Well, 3 months ago they were this many dollars behind," or they broke a window 6 months ago. Like this is not a time to try to solve those problems, is also what we learned. And so you need to have early on in the conversation, again, just to anyone purchasing a rental property, have those conversations early on in the process, not the day or two before closing, trying to understand what money needs to move across. Figure out the security deposit, how much is transferring, figure out any prorated monthly rent, and start those conversations early.
So I heard you say there was one buyer. Was it one for all of the properties that bought them all together as a package?
It started out where we were assigning them individually because the thought was, I think we can assign them at a higher price point rather than doing it in a bundle. And so for the first three, we assigned to one separate buyer, or actually is a couple separate buyers, individuals that wanted one or two. Then we were strategizing, okay, we have 18 left. What do we want to do? How do we want to send it out? We made a list of every property and what price we were going to ask. And I had made a phone call to a buyer that is pretty consistent for us. And I had mentioned, I'm going to send you this list. You let me know what you want of this list. So I emailed him the list with the prices that Clint and I had put together. And he texted me within a couple hours and he's like, I'll take the whole thing. And he offered, I think, like $30,000 more than what our asking prices were. So that quickly was like, our plan was initially to just let him buy what he wanted. And then he ended up buying the entire portfolio.
Even the first three that you had assigned to someone
Those
else
were already gone. Yeah, those
okay.
first three were already gone. But everything that remained, plus we added a few more in there because while that whole process was going down, we still had leads that were coming in and still went on appointments and still locked up other houses under contract. Well, when we sent that list to him, I included those ones that we had just picked up a few days ago, and those we assigned to those as well. So the whole thing happened really quickly, and it was a really wild experience.
Has this guy ever bought properties from you before?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So, did you email him specifically, or did you just advertise this to your broader list like you normally would?
We did not send it out to our broad list. I texted him a picture of a paper that had scribbled prices next to, like, Clint and I were sitting there. We talked about the address. Okay, price that. And then I just took a picture of that and sent it to him. So there was no email marketing plan, but I knew there were houses on that specific list that I knew he would be interested in. And that's what I really kind of expected him to say was, I'll take these ones. I was not expecting him to come back and say that he would take them all. So that was a bit of a surprise, but it was awesome. It was a really awesome thing too. So
yeah, I'll say. Well, that's really cool. How did this guy kind of find out about you guys originally? Do you recall how
he was a buyer that I had worked with my very first year in town.
Because in your first year, you posted your deal on Facebook, right? Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
Is that where he found you originally?
It actually took me reaching out to him multiple times because I think he was a little hesitant to work with wholesalers, and I was just persistent. I just kept messaging him, and we actually found some commonality. He is a Green Bay Packer fan. I was a Green Bay Packer fan, so I built our relationship based on, hey, we both like the same sports team, and I sparked up conversation with him with that. And then from that point on, he was more receptive to my emails and my texts. And so after I established the relationship in just friendship conversation, he learned through that process, okay, you're not just, he likes to refer to wholesalers as slimy car salesmen. once he realized that that's not what I was, that I was really trying to do a good, clean business operation, he was open to conversation. And then that first year, I think he bought maybe 5 or 6 from me. And then over the course of time, he has either been involved in buying or he's also offered us lending as well. So he'll lend on a deal if he doesn't specifically want it himself, but there's a deal for us, he'll be the lender as well.
Wow, man, this is crazy, guys. Do you think go ahead, Clint?
I was going to say, I want to give Ryan a small shout out as well, just thinking through like the sales strategy. He and I hadn't really talked about this, but there's a sales strategy called negative reverse selling, where you kind of like try to talk the person out of it as a way to not come across as a pushy sale. This is the best deal you've ever had. This is going to make you so much money,
Right.
Instead, you try to talk them out so that they pull you the other way and you're not trying to pull them.
Yeah.
And so I remember Ryan first talking with this individual, and the guy saying, "Hey, I want all the properties," and Ryan being like, "No, you don't want all these. Like, you're going to want too big of a discount. Like, this just probably isn't. We'll talk about a few." And the guy's like, "No, I want them all." Like, it's just the price wise. This probably, and he's like, "No, send me your prices. What do you want? What do you want?" And then, like Ryan said, not only did he give us what we asked, but his offer was $20,000 to $30,000 more. And that was also huge on the back end. So whenever we had all these tenants that had these like $200, $300 disagreements, we're like, let's just consider that, part of that. But then even like, it didn't really stop there, because Ryan was also, like he said before, he's like, "Well, hey, I'm only going to give you these properties if we lump these other two." There was 1 or 2 that we were having difficulty wholesaling, like they were just very challenging properties. And so again, he just kind of went the other direction, like, I think we're probably going to look to somebody. If somebody actually buys these as a bundle, we're probably going to require that they grab these other 2 as well. So I don't know if this is a good fit. Nope, give them to me. I'll take them. I'll take those other 2 also. So it was just a great.
And it was all genuine. I really did not. We wanted the strategy that was going to allow us to make the most money on this portfolio. And to me, it made more sense to sell them individually because we could get a higher price point for them. But when we narrowed it down and we're like, okay, what is that price point? And we said we thought we could get these amounts for each of these properties, there wasn't a bundle discount. For him, he kept saying he wanted the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, if you want the whole thing, here's what we are going to offer them. We're going to advertise them at these prices. And that was the whole point of, I'll send you this list, but this is the prices that we're asking. And I mean, it was very quick for him to say, yeah, I'll take it at that. So.
Well, great job. And I agree with your strategy that I probably would have thought it would have been better to sell them individually too, because in a lot of industries, a bundle discount is normal. But if his goal is to get 100 properties, it actually saves him a ton of time to do 20 at once as well. And it sounds like he was willing and interested to pay even a premium for the ability to do that, because it really does accelerate his timeline. And it also gives him like it's easier for him, right, to do it all in one swoop rather than 20 individual visits to the title company. So it was better for you, it's better for him, and he paid a little bit more as well for that. So I'm a huge fan, and I'm with you all the way on how you were thinking about it.
Yeah, this was by far and away one of the biggest challenges in getting a deal. I mean, it was super rewarding, but there was so many snags and so many big things. I mean, it literally took months of organizing all the appointments and walkthroughs and gathering all the rental agreements. And it was just, it felt like by the time it was done, it was like, okay, we earned every penny of that.
Yeah, there was a new fight every day with this. A new fight as in like to save the deal, to keep the deal moving forward for 2.5 months.
Are you able to say the size of the deal?
Yeah, I mean, we grossed, I think it was 576 altogether.
Wow, that's awesome.
So,
and especially in St. Joe, where average house price is lower, right? So you expect to make a lower assignment fee.
Yeah.
as part of that. Absolutely incredible. Why did you have to talk to the property manager at all? I guess that was one question I
The
had.
seller was out of state, as so
Right.
was
I get
the
that.
power of attorney,
Oh,
and
so he's providing access. He's the
yeah,
one who's letting you in and out.
correct. Yep.
Correct.
We had to look at these before we gave our price and we signed the contract, but there was also this is dependent on our inspection of the property. We didn't want to offer $20,000 and then find out there's a foundation that's collapsing on all four sides and no roof or a roof leak inside, or whatever the case may be. So it was required that we get inside and see them. So that property manager, we had to work with them. They're the only ones that had the key, and so we actually went with them to all of the properties, met all of the tenants, saw the condition of every home. I mean, that alone was like a 3-day process. So
Is your new owner, does he anticipate doing any construction on these homes? Because I know you guys realize a lot of people buy these homes that have been neglected, but then they don't clean them up. So it kind of looks bad on you because you're not visibly improving
right.
the community. So I know that's been big for you guys. That's why you guys have a construction company, is so that your buyers can use you to do the construction. So what's the story there? Obviously they're livable because they're all filled except
Yeah,
for two, right?
They're all
most of
rented.
them look decent from the outside. Very few, if any, were like, "Whoa, these are in terrible shape. This needs fixed." So I would imagine that his strategy is to hold them as is with the current tenants, and then when the tenants move out, potentially fix them up a little bit more. But for the most part, the property management company and the owner, I think the owner took pride in having like decent houses. So they, vinyl windows, roofs, okay, AC, all the AC units were in cages, like, so he took some pride in trying to keep up with them over the years.
Got
And the
it. Well,
buyer
that's good to hear.
too does care about the look and appeal of the town. So like we knew we were in good hands. That's something that we went through early on. Is like if we would assign a property to someone and we would notice, okay, they either didn't fix it up or what they did to it really did not help. I would typically not circle back to that buyer because it's a small town. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows what everyone does. And I didn't want to be a part of making the city look worse. So
Right.
there was just certain people that's like, okay, well, that didn't go the way we were expecting. So we're going to find buyers that match up with what we want. And that's where the construction came in too, because a lot of them couldn't do that. They couldn't
Yeah.
get it where we were comfortable with it. So it was like, okay, let's start a construction company. So when we assign a property to someone, they can then hire us. We can ensure that the property gets fixed up to our standard for what we expect it to look like when it's done. But they don't have to worry about finding their own crew. They've got a
Right.
crew, and then we just keep them in that stable. When they're done with the project, they circle back, and we can keep that wheel turning. So
Yep. Well, here's some lessons that I think people could take away from this is one is the bubble gut stomach feeling. Two was Clint's, impression that if you're offering a lower offer, it's going to only help you, but also the seller's wish to sell the properties quickly, because the lower it is, the faster that this property would go. And then three, you made an offer, not seeing things, and you were okay with that, right? Because it offered the seller convenience, which is what they really wanted. Any other lessons that you guys would tack on to that?
I would say the need to have empathy for each person involved and to try to see things through their lens. Like, it's easy for us to be operational and like, this is the next step, this is the next step. But throughout the process, there were a lot of people that had emotions that good or bad along the way. And so I think just, yeah, handling those with empathy and trying to understand where they're coming from, and while still working toward the end goal of the deal. Seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy, but everyone in between Because I think had we not acted with empathy and understanding and tried to meet them where they were at, I think it would have gone even rougher in the middle of that. And I think there may have been certain properties that would have tried, or property managers that would have tried to sabotage certain areas. And maybe the finish line, had that happened, maybe the finish line would have been we closed 10 properties rather than 21 properties. So I'd say that was a big piece as well.
Wait, how could you have only closed 10? You're saying that just because some of the tenants may not have been as willing to let you in or stay, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fully know. We had to close some of these in different chunks based on a variety of factors. Not a lot of different. Like I think we had 3 different closing days
Okay.
based on different factors. And
Oh,
so
just because lack of cooperation, maybe about when you can go in,
a little
or...
bit, or whether a tenant should be evicted or should not be evicted,
Right.
and prior to a close, and some things like that.
Got it. Yeah, that's a really good one. Thanks for clarifying on that. What about you, Ryan? Anything else that you'd want to send people away with as a lesson?
Man, we've covered so many things. I think that the biggest thing is answer the phone, because all of this came from a phone call, and if you don't follow up on that, we could have easily lost a 21 package deal. We could have easily lost a $576,000 assignment fee simply by not answering the phone when it rang. So make sure you're setting yourself up in a position that you can answer the phones when it rings. And if you can't, make sure somebody can, because those deals, I mean, Clint, if you remember, she had mentioned, the power of attorney had mentioned they had sent this to several other people and they were just waiting, basically. And I remember telling Clint, let's just get an offer, because the first person to get an offer is going to win this. And
move quickly. That would be the lesson.
Yeah, move quick.
Yeah. And I would say, let me add one more thing in there too. This is just because I think this principle can happen to be good for any deal that someone's managing. If you as the wholesaler or whomever are frustrated with the seller, or in this case, potentially a power of attorney or someone in the process, if there's a frustration, like pick up the phone, don't text, because there were a lot of frustrations in this process. There were people that didn't understand how title companies work, different parts of the process. And it would have been, in a lot of cases, 8 or 9 p.m. or whenever, just to send to share how we felt about that person or their opinion in the moment. But that phone call so that they can hear the tone of your voice and how that you can calm them down in certain situations goes a long way. So if you ever have an angry text, either sleep on it or don't send it, or probably both, actually.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing this deal. I know that it was at least 3 months in the making from start to finish. And even you called them in January. So it was something I was really looking forward to today. So thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
Sure. All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.